Look at all these great games. I wonder which one I should play. Maybe Croc. That's always a good one to play every now and then. No. Not this. They've gone and done it again! Hello and welcome to Rob's Retro Reviews. Today we're taking a look at Hugo, The Quest for the Sunstones, which is the third game in the Hugo series on PS1. If you want to know more about the previous games in the series, I recommend you check out my videos on them. I'll link them below in the description for if you're interested. Now, Hugo, The Quest for the Sunstones marks a departure from the series, because this is the first one that's not a minigame compilation, and instead it's a 3D platformer, which is right up my alley. So let's pop this in and take a look at it. First of all, we're treated to an opening cutscene, which introduces us to a new villain who is seemingly working for Scylla, the antagonist from the previous two games. Some strange creatures are having a party near Scylla's castle, and the noise from the celebration is stopping the crocodile villain and Scylla from sleeping. So, being the bad people that they are, they aim to put a stop to the festivities by clogging up a nearby volcano, which causes lava to begin leaking from the top, posing a threat to the strange party creatures. The tribe of creatures summon a guidebook for such occurrences, because this sort of thing happens enough for a guidebook to be necessary. For these creatures, a volcano eruption is just the equivalent of a broken toaster. The book shows them that the solution to their issue comes in the form of Hugo the Troll, who's the only one capable of unclogging the volcano. God help them. We're then taken to the main menu in one of the most abrupt endings to a cutscene I think I've ever seen. Okay, so the story isn't the worst ever, but it's not great, is it? The new villain is completely unnecessary because he doesn't really do anything. Scylla could have just used a magic to clog up the volcano, rather than the crocodile using a catapult, so what's the point in him even being there? Other than that, we have a simple setup to the game which involves Hugo randomly having to help a tribe of partying creatures by collecting 3 Sunstones, which have the power to unclog the volcano. So off on the adventure we go. Before we jump straight into the game though, I think we should take a look at the main menu. It was quite entertaining in the second game after all. There's practically nothing here. Just a start game option, a sound settings option, and a password input option. Wait a minute, password saving? Yep, Hugo the Quest for the Sunstones, released in the year 2000, uses a password save system and gives you no option to use a memory card. This is ridiculous. Memory cards had become the normal way of saving way before this point, and hold on a second, Hugo 2 used memory card saving, so why have we now gone back to the past? Let's just move on, I guess. The sound settings are about as basic as they come, and even the credits aren't entertaining this time either. This is disappointing. The last game's menu gave me way more material to work off than this. I suppose one thing this menu does is gives us a first look at Hugo in 3D. He looks alright, I guess. Not the best 3D model I've ever seen, but it's passable for sure. Well, having exhausted everything I can out of the main menu, let's move on to the actual game, I suppose. Each new level starts with a cutscene which sets up the visual theme and moves the story forward slightly. None of the cutscenes are at all eventful or entertaining in the slightest, which is a shame. They literally just exist so the next level can happen without there being huge amounts of disconnect between the themes. Also, the voice acting featured in the previous games is now completely absent, which is weird because that seemed to be a huge part of Hugo's character. I wonder why they changed that.
Okay now, no time to lose. Let's get this game started!
On second thought, it's probably a good thing he's silent now. Okay, so we're finally on the first level. The only controls here seem to be jumping, moving, crouching and whipping, which apparently is now Hugo's primary attack. I guess he never really had an attack before, so they just had to make something up. I have to admit though, I quite like the sound effect for the whip. So as I mentioned at the start of the review, this game is a 3D platformer which is structured similarly to Crash Bandicoot in terms of the camera being mostly fixed to one position as you move down a hallway-like level. The main collectibles are these gems, these hearts, these bottles, and these scrolls, or peanuts. The gems are basically coins from Super Mario Bros. Or Wumpa Fruit from Crash Bandicoot. You get 100 and it gives you a 1-up. The hearts give you an instant 1-up, the bottles refill your health slightly, and I actually have no idea what whatever these things are do. Let's look at the manual and find out, I guess. This should be a lark. Oh, it turns out that they are scrolls, and they act as the game's checkpoints. It also turns out that the crocodile bad guy's name is Don Croco, and the partying creatures are called Kikorians. That's nice, I guess. It's a bit weird how there isn't any kind of main collectible in this game. Most 3D platformers have something akin to Super Mario 64's Power Stars. You know, like Jiggies in Banjo-Kazooie, gems in Crash Bandicoot, orbs in Spyro 2, or cages in Rayman 2. But in this game there's nothing to do besides get to the end of the levels. It makes the game feel quite empty and shallow, and means there's absolutely no reason to explore or find secrets. Not that there are any anyway. I don't like how the first level teaches you how to crouch and then places a swinging obstacle in the air that you can't crouch under, despite it quite clearly not hitting you. Why bother teaching us how to crouch if you're not even going to utilise it? You know what, I seriously don't know why they even implemented a crouch function into the game, because, no exaggeration, you use it twice in the entire game, and that includes the bit you've just seen in the first level. Strange. You remember back in Hugo 1 where the levels would just sometimes abruptly end without there being a clear finishing point? Well yeah, this game also has that problem. You'll just be running down a path and it'll cut to the password screen. It doesn't make you feel very rewarded when that happens, but either way, we're now on the second level. You know something else that's a bit strange? The levels aren't even given names. They're not even given numbers. How are you supposed to refer to them? I don't like the Super Mario Bros. Naming convention very much, but at least that's something. Do you recall Hugo 2 and how one of the main positive things I said about it was that they actually bothered to include music this time? Well yeah, guess what Hugo the Quest for the Sunstones doesn't have? If you guessed music, you're spot on. It's like they took a look at what they did better in Hugo 2 when compared to Hugo 1, and when I think we did too much of a good job with Hugo 2. We spoiled our customers by having memory card saving and music. I think when we make Hugo 3, we definitely need to get rid of those things. We can't make a game that functions too well, otherwise people might think we're actually good game developers or something. After getting about halfway through the second level of the game, you might be noticing things that look familiar. I can't quite put my finger on it. What other game has fish jumping out of water that you have to avoid, jumping on lily pads, a mix of 2D and 3D perspectives, plant enemies that attempt to bite you, and barrels being thrown towards the screen that you have to avoid? I know there's another game that does all of this, but I can't quite remember what it is. I will say, despite all the negative things I've said so far in this review, Hugo does actually control quite well. There are issues sometimes with the whip either missing when it looks like it hits things, or hitting things when it doesn't look like it's supposed to, but the general jumping and movement actually feels half decent. Good job, Hugo. Now back to the negatives. Why is this level so goddamn dark? I can hardly see what's water and what's a lily pad. Another problem is that certain levels go on for far too long and don't mix up the visuals at all. It gets boring very fast. Well, I wonder what the third level has in store for us. I remember now. It's quite obvious to see that the quest for the Sunstones was very heavily inspired by Crash Bandicoot. Only crap. It's Crap Bandicoot. And that's not the only inspiration either. Take a look at this cutscene that plays after you finish the third level. Does this remind you of a certain 1996 survival horror game?
Harry, help me please! The door won't open! Quick!
Stay away from the door, Joe. I'm gonna kick this door down.
Well, it should, because this is taken straight from Resident Evil. Moving on. Oh my god! Oh. Alright then. The fourth level is set inside a volcano where you have to do some timed platforming while avoiding hot steam. These sections are actually pretty good, but there's a lot of stuff going on in this level that's questionable. Like this bit where it's unobvious as to where you need to go because of it being so dark. Or this problem with audio-visual feedback where it's not clear at all if you've jumped into lava or not. This section where it's almost pitch black and you can get hit by oncoming obstacles. Or this section where you're supposed to jump across this gap, but the platform on the left looks a lot closer to where you're supposed to jump to, but in actual fact you're supposed to jump from the middle platform instead, despite it looking further away. At the end of this level you get the closest thing this game has to a boss. There's 5 lava enemies and 4 of them will be throwing projectiles. They won't actually aim for you though, they just sort of throw fireballs in a set position and never stray from it, which makes the fight extremely easy. For some reason these particular enemies take way more hits than the ones in the rest of the level, but all that means is that you have to stand still whipping for longer. The last of the 5 enemies actually fights back. He's still really easy to beat, you just whip once and then move back out of his range. But this is the only enemy in the whole game that's actually somewhat interesting to fight against, so it's worth mentioning. The 5th level is very unremarkable, so I'm not going to dwell on it for too long. For the vast majority of it, you're just moving to the right on a path that doesn't change at all. There's not even any platforming, you're just running. It's extremely boring, and I can only assume they simply forgot to design this bit of the level because it's so bland. Later on though, you do get some more interesting stuff. The floor will turn into ice and there will be some ice physics that cause you to slip around. It's a shame this is never implemented into the platforming though. It's just there on big chunks of level for seemingly no reason. What a letdown. The 6th level is an extremely basic switch puzzle in a circular room. This is the sort of thing that in a normal platformer would be one tiny part of a larger area, but here it's an entire level. It's over in about a minute and you move on to the next stage. Rejoice, because the 7th level is the second time you'll need to crouch in the entire game. You know, this bit really does remind me of something. I really wish I could remember what this damn game is that it reminds me of. Nope, I just can't remember. I don't know what's going on with my memory today. The 8th level is where the game suddenly takes a drastic turn and becomes a first-person downhill obstacle course. Hugo is stuck in a minecart which has gone off-road and is now zooming down a snowy mountain unable to stop. Why the perspective has to shift from third person to first person, I have no idea. For a while the camera perspective was putting me off and I was thinking that the X button was making me jump, you know, like in the rest of the game. But later on I noticed he was actually crouching inside the minecart to take cover. So why on earth didn't they bind this function to the circle button? You know, the button that's been crouch all this time. I was having quite a lot of trouble with this level before figuring out you could crouch, but after figuring that out, it's actually a fairly good section of the game. The controls feel a bit floaty and it can be difficult to tell exactly where your hitbox is, but it's passable and it does inject some much needed variety into the game. Still though, there was no need to make this style of gameplay last for 2 consecutive levels, but that's what happens because in level 9 it's just more of what happened in level 8 with very little difference. If you ever wanted to experience the sledge minigame from Hugo 2 but in first person, then this is the game for you. Level 10 is where things start to take a nosedive. Here we find ourselves in a sort of water-themed level, complete with pirate ghosts. What even is this game's theme? All the levels feel very disjointed and unconnected because there's no explanation given as to why anything is happening. I don't feel like I'm exploring an island, I feel like I'm just playing through random stages in entirely different games. How was I supposed to even know that that was going to happen? Okay, I suppose now we know how the tentacles swipe, it should be easier to avoid. Oh my god, I hate this. How was I supposed to avoid that? Yep, I'm done. The design of this level eventually begins to outright repeat itself. When you get about halfway through, you'll be jumping across the same lake as before and going through the same tunnels as before. Yeah, they have slightly different enemy placements, but it's still very lazy to reuse the exact same designs that the player has already seen in this same level. This is the only point that I got a game over, and the main penalty for doing so is that you have to start from the beginning of the level again. I was thinking you might be booted to the main menu and have to put the password in, but this isn't the case, so at least we were spared from that massive waste of time. This is easily the worst level in the game. It's far too long and it's not obvious enough when and where the tentacle enemies can hit you. If they do hit you into the water, you lose a ton of health and you'll most likely get hit and die later on. So it feels like you have to get lucky to avoid the tentacles and be able to progress. It's just annoying. The tentacles should have been constantly swiping in a pattern, so you could clearly see where they can hit you and so that you can time the jumps properly. Even if they would have just made it so they swipe slower to give you more time to react, it would have fixed the issue here. Anyway, let's leave that mess behind us and head over to level 11. Hey look, guillotines, just like in another game that I can't quite remember the name of. And hey, these platforms moving in and out in a timed sequence remind me of something too. I really wish I could remember what it was though. In all honesty, the main issue with this level is how when you die, you have to go all the way back to the start. Other than that, it's just really boring and basic. There's nothing that stands out about it at all. The enemies just stand there most of the time and are easy to walk past, and the actual design of the level mostly just consists of walking straight forward through the never-changing environment. Now we're on the final level, so let's take a look at the cutscene. Wow, you know things are getting serious when you start waving your spatula arm like that. This level is a boulder chase sequence where you're running from a tornado and avoiding lava rocks falling from the sky. The tornado also shoots these smaller tornadoes at you, which can be quite unpredictable and annoying to dodge. But all in all, it's just another really mediocre level. And this is it, there's no last boss or anything. After this, the game just ends and you're finished. But before it ends fully, we do at least get to watch the final cutscene, which wraps up the game's story. Using the power of the 3 Sunstones Hugo has collected during his travels, the tribe leader repels the tornado and unclogs the volcano. Then this happens. The tornado then comes back for Scylla. Oh, what a funny twist of fate. Hugo then has a party with the tribe and everyone lives happily ever after. How nice. Oh, I guess we're back at the main menu then. I don't know what's wrong with this game, but it has really abrupt cutting after every single cutscene. There's not really much I can say about this game. It's just so basic, dull and uninteresting, and I can't see a single reason that you would play this over literally any other 3D platformer. It's not the worst game ever by any means, but to be the 3rd game in a series, only counting the PS1 games, and for this to be the best they have to offer, it doesn't fill me with much hope for the rest of the series. I'm giving Hugo the Quest for the Sunstones a 3 out of 10. The positives are that it functions as an actual video game and surprisingly controls fairly decently most of the time. It tells a bare-bones story, but at least it makes a degree of sense. It attempts to add some variety by offering 2.5D levels and a single vehicle section on top of the standard 3D levels. And that's about it. The biggest problems with it are that it has a lack of charm, which is odd considering charm was literally the only thing the previous 2 games had going for it. It has a lack of originality, and it has boring level and visual design. You can finish playing it and have forgotten about every single level almost instantly, it's that bad. This isn't helped by the fact the game doesn't have any music at all. I really don't get that. Even Hugo 1 had music in a couple of stages. Music is absolutely vital to a platformer because without it everything feels empty and it makes it hard for the levels to have much of an identity. Having said that, Hugo the Quest for the Sunstones is a lot better than Hugo 1 and 2, so for that, I suppose we can be relieved. Next time in the Hugo Marathon, we'll be covering Hugo Black Diamond Fever, which is actually a direct sequel to Hugo the Quest for the Sunstones. For now though, we can rest easy in knowing that we're halfway through covering all of the Hugo games on the PS1. Thanks for watching my review. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, maybe subscribe, and leave a comment letting me know what you thought. If you've played this game, I'm interested to know what you think about it. Keep an eye out for more Hugo videos coming in the future, and I'll see you next time. Bye!